I'm here with David Murray of the National Symphony Orchestra in Washington, D.C. If anybody's not had the chance to hear them, you should. It's one of the greatest treasures in America. And I'm lucky enough to be able to listen to you guys at least a couple times a year. Whenever I'm there for the American Trombone Workshop, I always try and make a point and get into a concert. You have a new music director.
We do.
And
very excited about it.
Who is it?
His name is Gianandrea Nozeda, obviously from Italy. He's been well known in Europe, also a very well known guest conductor for many years, but this is his first appointment as an American music director, and we're very, very fortunate to have him.
So a lot of times with the change of a music director, it's interesting for me to study how an orchestra will sound with one music director to the next.
Right.
And can you talk a little bit about how just having a different person and stick or even approach can help or change the orchestra?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because in the relatively short amount of time that I've been in the National Symphony, I've already seen how sounds can be changed very quickly. When I was first beginning, it was Christoph Eschenbach who was the music director, coming from a very, very well-respected, well-founded Germanic tradition. And he was following two music directors, Leonard Slatkin, the American, and the very famous Mstislav Rostropovich, the Russian. And I think through Slatkin and Rostropovich, the orchestra gained real vitality in the sound, a brilliance, but not in a bright way, but a very interesting kind of excitement, you know, through the sort of the Russian energy and American precision. These things developed. Eschenbach following, well, with Ivan Fischer in between as an interim conductor. So having then people from Central Europe come in to help form a really rich sound on that core German repertoire. So to be a part of that process while Eschenbach was the music director, now Maestro Nozeda has the opportunity to take that sound and kind of take that sound and run with it in his own personal way. So you know, it's sort of an engagement of that, you know, how should we say, in the Italianate way, you know, where things are you know, very visceral and energized. You know, it's then we get into the subtleties, but it's amazing how quickly these things can't latch on, you know, with compelling musicianship from the podium.
That's, now you've been in since 2014, is that correct?
Right.
And every young musician wants to know the same thing. How do I win a job? How do I win a job? I just need to win a job. How do I get a paycheck? So we'll address that here. And going back to 2014, from freelancing in the many orchestras that you did, from Cincinnati to San Antonio, which I didn't know that you did that. Sorry, I must have, but because I was always there at some point. Where am I missing? Where else did you go? Baltimore.
Overseas as well.
Yeah, and so when you prep for an audition to win, and you're looking at equipment and you're trying, obviously trying to win the job, what advice in preparation and equipment-wise, what would you suggest for younger players?
Well, it's it's maybe tough for me to answer because I don't consider myself a hyper equipment person, you know, but maybe in a way that's kind of a good thing.
Me either.
Yeah, yeah. As you can see, these are actually all the same. So no, but you know, I think, you know, in my time in school and in my time as a freelancer, you know, I was taking auditions with various degrees of success, more unsuccessful than those that were successful. But that being said, you know, by the time when I started having a greater percentage of, you know, advancing or being offered a position or something like that, what I had prioritized for myself is choosing equipment that provided a great sense of efficiency in the heat of the moment on stage, and also whether that was mouthpiece, instrument, the combination of the two, so to make sure that I wasn't overworking myself and fatiguing prematurely, shall we say, during a tough first round, second round, something like that, where you're so on point and you're giving more because the adrenaline's pumping and stuff like that, and just making sure that the instrument is not making you work any harder than you need to.
Under duress, yeah. That makes total sense to me. And I listen for that as well. The ease in playing, so it's a natural resonance.
Right.
So that you're not having to do something unnatural to create the resonance that you want.
Right.
Which actually, you're now a professor at Peabody. I'm not sure of your exact title there. You've been there, is this your first year?
My first semester.
Yeah.
Just finishing.
Now you're at Peabody, and can you talk about the transition from, you're doing both now, performing and educating at the same time. Can you talk a little bit about these different roles and the challenges?
Well, yeah, it's interesting for me because this is really my first foray into passing information on a consistent level to new players.
Mm-hmm.
It's all well and good to be in my practice room and doing my things that I need to do for my own playing or in preparation for upcoming weeks, and I can have lots of internal conversations with myself while I practice on my own, and I can do my own self-learning, which I'm still trying to figure out how to play this thing myself, And now it's required of me to pass information on to students who are seeking it. And so what I've found is, in the heat of the moment, I need to fall back on all those internal conversations I've had and articulate them to other human beings. And the process of that has been quite a revelation for me, because I find myself then in the practice room working on something and struggling, and I say, well, come on, what did you just tell your students yesterday? And so it in a way is great, because I feel, even though I'm, yes, a professor of trombone and I'm the teacher and stuff like that, I feel really like my approach is one of, I'm a student too, and I'm learning along the way, and let me sort of have a conversation with you about what I've learned, but know that I'm still very much engaged and still trying to learn the best possible way myself.
Yeah, I think that's any great musician throughout your life. You've never arrived. Whenever I've worked with people, they're constantly adjusting things. Even on this trip here,
right.
We've had conversations last week, and we outlined our goals for this trip,
mm-hmm.
and we didn't get to them all. We wanted to work on the bass trombone a little bit,
right.
And we started running into time constraints. And instead of rushing and trying to fit everything in, we just slowed down and really did one thing. I think we found some really viable options equipment-wise.
Mm-hmm.
When David came up, he wanted to have another instrument, so you don't have to. Do you want to talk a little bit about it?
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, the whole point of this trip was very self-serving, because I don't want to carry a trombone anymore. But trying to find something that I can. Total first world problems here. But find something that I can keep at the hall that will remain a hall instrument in good condition. Wear and tear of traveling. Can prematurely wear instruments beyond what the professional trombonist is doing anyway.
But also having a backup instrument or backup equipment, in my mind, is crucial.
In any instance, yeah.
Because
backup, yeah.
I always have a mouthpiece with me in all my cars or vehicles. Not that I have a fleet of cars. I don't have a fleet of cars, but I always have a backup, because it's important. If your slide gets damaged and you have a job,
right.
You have to have a backup. And yes, you didn't want to have to carry it back and forth, but now we have backup equipment that plays the same or so similar that you could pick it up at any moment, right. And perform on it.
Right.
Because when you have drastically different equipment and you have to play under duress,
you never know what can come out
right.
Sometimes.
Right. And so I think that's really important to have. Back to Peabody. When you're working with your students, do you ever go into the equipment with them and focus on that?
Generally, no. I think at a certain point, equipment is very, very important, but at a certain point, one also needs to let go of that compulsion to search and then know that it's not the instrument's fault, at least for the next few years, you know, and let's use this new setup, let's use these instruments to help us understand ourselves, you know. And I think that there can be a lot of great things learned on very, very standard equipment. However, I do think that nowadays, very standard equipment does require one to go and purchase a high quality instrument, a high quality mouthpiece, if you are actually serious about doing this, you know. And then from there, when we know that the instrument that's been constructed, the mouthpiece that's been created is something that is up to date and is positively self-serving, then we can go from there, and then we just leave it, you know, and then we look at, you know, air and embouchure formation and you know, tongue placement and things like that that are as much a part of this process, you know, than anything else. You know?
With this trip, one thing's become very apparent to me, and it's that you have a very individual voice in your mind that you want to come out the trombone. Are there any techniques that you use in lessons or with younger players to help them obtain their own voice or to get out what is their ideal sound?
Well, I think that's
a tough question.
Yeah, it's a tough. Yeah, it is
3 hours later.
Yeah, right. Well, you know, it's interesting. I think it's up to me communicating to my students that I don't want them to sound like me. You know, I have those trombonists who, you know, have been and are, you know, inspirations to my sound concept, to my development, and I still, you know, think about that quite a bit, but I don't want to necessarily sound exactly like them, because then it's untrue, and then we are all trying to imitate one thing, and it seems just kind of disingenuous. You know, I tell my students that are there now, or anyone, you know, that's coming to study for me, that I'm not telling you have to do exactly at the end of the day what I'm saying, but if you choose a different path, whether it's a phrase or if it's your sound concept or something like that, I just ask that that person commit to it with the same level of purposefulness as I did for me, because then it is a true interpretation of their self, of myself, and we can most quickly gravitate towards it on the performing stage, you know, and then there's the opportunity then to have that be the convincing musicianship, not trying to be a replication of someone else.
I think that's great. I think that's really great. You know, I think we're done because it's 4:15. We have quite a few things to get to still try and test. So I'm not trying to rush you, and I'm sorry.
No.
But I appreciate you dropping by. We're going to get back to testing a couple of their mouthpieces and instruments, and then I gotta go. We gotta get.
Keep going.
So thanks, Dave.
Yeah. Thank you.